Hello and welcome to Policy Watch, your packed snapshot on the week's biggest business stories, their context, relevance and impact. I'm Frank Pereira on Rajya Sabha Television. Our top focus, the US continues efforts to revive and reboot strategic ties with India. Secretary of State John Kerry and Secretary of Commerce Penny Pritzker participated in the 5th Indo-US Strategic Dialogue held in New Delhi. This is the first high-level meeting between the two countries since Narendra Modi-led NDA government assumed power in May this year. US leaders welcomed raised foreign investment ceilings in several areas including defense, railways, e-commerce and insurance. Both sides also agreed to identify specific areas for investment in India's manufacturing and infrastructure sector. India and the US pledged to work for promotion of clean energy, solar energy and energy efficient buildings. India and the US reaffirmed commitment to full implementation of the India-US Civil Nuclear Agreement and urged Indian partner NPCIL and US companies Westinghouse and GE Hitachi to expeditiously conclude the work on pricing and contractual details for setting up nuclear power plants in India. A glitch in Indo-US ties remains India's decision to block implementation of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement. Kerry took up the issue of continued agricultural subsidies by India with Indian leaders. India has clarified its position, saying developed nations should be mindful of problems faced by emerging economies.
We discussed scheduling our long-pending commercial dialogue, our ministerial trade policy forum, and other vital dialogue mechanisms to address outstanding trade and economic issues that arise as a natural result of different perceptions. Today, at the conclusion of this 5th strategic dialogue, we can take satisfaction in the fact that within the few years since we raised our relationship to a strategic plane, our bilateral dialogue has an all-of-government character.
Joining me on Policy Watch this week is senior journalist Priya Ranjan. Priya Ranjan, welcome to the show. And let's talk about this very crucial meeting, of course, between John Kerry and his Indian counterparts that was held in Delhi. He also met the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Let's talk first about, of course, the trade target that has been set by both the countries. Currently, the trade is at $96 billion. The estimated target is $500 billion US. Do you think that that figure is achievable?
Well, it is achievable. You know, as we all know, US is the world's biggest economy, and it has a trade with China, the second largest economy, of a much higher order. Clearly, with India, which is eventually going to be the third or the fourth largest economy in the world, the $96 billion present trade volume, two-way trade volume, is too little. And so, Indo-US trade volume, you know, $500 billion or $500 billion is quite achievable. It is India needs technology from US,
yes, and
would be sourcing technology from the US, and US eventually would be sourcing a lot of services from India. So the trade volume has to bound to go up. It's another thing that India's trade with China at present is higher than the trade volume with the US,
yes,
and that may continue to remain so and will grow faster even. That is because the world economic geography has changed, and the trade between India and China, that is the trade within Asia, is going to be much more than India's trade going 7 seas across Atlantic to the US.
Yes. Indeed, of course, you raised a very interesting point and a very valid point about how China is the second largest economy in the world, yet India and China have got a bigger trade going than India and US. And going forward, of course, do you believe that that's how it's going to go with, India's trade with China is only going to increase, but there could be some kind of stumbling blocks as far as trade between India and US is concerned?
Well, with China, there is no question. The way trade has grown in recent years, and the potential for the future is immense. The US-China trade has been essentially supply of consumer goods out of China to
yes,
US.
Yes.
And as we know, US runs a huge trade deficit vis-a-vis China. India and China too, the trade between India and China, also the problem is India runs a large trade deficit with China. But our trade deficit with China is not entirely to our disadvantage. That is because we get cheaper goods, although the imports are much more than the exports that we do out of India. The imports are cheaper. So that actually is a help. The trade deficit is actually a help to India in many ways. So notwithstanding the trade deficit that we have in China, which needs to be addressed, of course, India's trade with China is bound to grow because these are the two fastest growing economy in the world, and they will remain so for the next decade and more.
Yes. Indeed. Okay. Let's talk about one issue that seems to have overshadowed John Kerry's visit to India. That, of course, is the WTO trade deal. Now, as far as this deal is concerned, John Kerry and the US tried to pressurize India. They tried all their stops to try and pressurize India into giving in. But India stood strong and did not give in. So, as far as this particular deal is concerned, what do you see happening?
I think that was a given that India had to block the deal on trade facilitation, which is essentially a customs agreement among countries. Much has been spoken about the potential of that customs agreement among nations in terms of the addition that it will make to the world GDP and the employment that will be created. So India is all for trade facilitation. After all, it helps India too in terms of import and export trade. But India's priorities are in feeding its hungry people. There is a food security bill, although this government, it was the previous government which brought in. It is the Parliament of India, and with the support of the present, the government, the party that is ruling today, that the food security bill has been passed, and the food security bill has continued to get the support in the recent budget that the new government has presented. So the government seems, any government for that matter in India would remain committed to food security. So any international arrangement which doesn't provide the policy flexibility to India to maintain large stocks to feed its 1.25 billion people, is completely not going to be acceptable. Now, so clearly it's not only just India's needs, it's actually the need of the developing world. And India was leading several other countries which had similar food security concerns. Now, this is something that the developed world must understand. Unfortunately, they did not. And as a result, I guess India was left with no option but to say that we are not in a position to agree to the Bali package. So
you're saying India is right in saying that developed nations need to understand the needs of developing nations. That's the stand that India has taken.
On things like this.
Yes, exactly, on things like this.
Because these are genuine concerns, and these affects millions of people, poor hungry people. Not only that, we've had the recent the UN report says that 1/3 of the world's hungry poor people live in India. Now, so you can understand the enormity of the task that India has to have in terms of ensuring food security. Now, that is while India would like to keep its image of being a business-friendly economy, which is what the trade facilitation agreement is all about, to be business-friendly. Its priorities are in serving the millions of marginal small farmers, in serving the hungry millions.
Indeed, of course. Let's move on to the other issue that was discussed, of course, the US civil nuclear agreement. Now, both India and the US have reaffirmed commitment to full implementation of this. Now, what does this mean and how do you see this going forward?
Well, if you look, initially it was entered, the India-US civil nuclear agreement was in 2005. And in 2008, when it was finalized, and the safeguard agreements which got, and the legal framework which got finalized rather more recently. Now, following that, other countries have taken the lead. The Russians are here.
Yes.
The French are here. It is a lot was expected or was said would result by way of the US companies getting involved in nuclear power generation in India. That hasn't happened. The US companies have been fighting shy of the safeguards legal framework that has been passed by India's parliament. Now it's high time, otherwise they would be missing the bus.
Yes.
Of course, India would like the involvement of the US companies, because those are large companies in the nuclear field, and there is a potential of developing India's nuclear energy in cooperation with the US-based companies.
Where was the roadblock, do you believe, in all of this, going through? Was it also pricing? Was pricing also a major problem as far as this is concerned?
Well, you see, in the US companies interested to do business in the nuclear power generation in India have to finalize the details of the commercial agreements. Those are matters to be discussed. But if the French can see business sense, and if the Russians see the business sense in the nuclear power area here, in this area which is clean energy technology, one of the focus area of the strategic dialogue between the two countries, I wonder why the US companies, Westinghouse and GE and all these, can't see and surmount these commercial issues.
Yeah, so these companies need to really get beyond the commercial issues, because India...
No, they will not get beyond the commercial. It has to be essentially commercial.
It has to be commercial, of course.
But I do not see that there can be difficulties if the French find it profitable and the Russian find it profitable. The US, I think they have got caught in that or rather they feel that the legal framework wasn't to their liking, or they have been scared of it. So I think they should get out of it.
Okay, they should get out of it, and that's where the real roadblock is what Priya Ranjan Dash is in fact saying at the moment. Interesting that you raise civil energy as well. This too, clean energy, I beg your pardon. Clean energy also, there's been a lot of talk about clean energy, solar energy, and what needs to be done to promote clean energy. Now, how do you see that going forward?
Well, as you said, there's been a lot of talk. We need action to begin. There is clearly a lot of potential that can happen in US cooperating with India in developing clean energy. Fact remains that energy demand in India
is high.
There will be an explosive growth, and it has to be, because the per capita consumption in India is among the lowest in the world today, and its economy is growing fast. So in coming years, India would be needing more and more energy, and its development has to be fueled by energy. So that being the case, unless India gets the technology and which US has, and the cooperation, India would be more reliant on not so clean energy,
right? Because
India's resource base, if you look at it, the indigenous resource base is coal.
Yes.
So it is in clean coal technology, and it is in non-conventional energy that solutions have to be found. India is looking for solutions. US as a strategic partner would be of great help in this endeavor of India's development.
Indeed, remains to be seen how India and US take these ties forward. Of course, do stay with us, Priya Ranjan Dash. We'll come back to you after this very short break and talk about another pressing matter, FDI in insurance. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Now, the government's first big economic reform, raising the FDI cap in insurance sector to 49% from the present 26%, has run into trouble. Leading opposition parties thwarted the government's plan to take up the insurance bill for voting in the Rajya Sabha. The Insurance Amendment Bill of 2008 is now slated to be taken up on Monday. However, several leading opposition parties, including the TMC, CPI and CPM, have demanded that the bill be referred to a select committee. Congress, which has 69 members in the upper house, also supports the opposition's demand.
The substantive changes have also affected a major change in the nature and character of the bill. This is why the majority of the opposition parties are of the view that the bill should be re-examined by a committee of this House, and this is why we have decided that the matter should be referred to a select committee, for which we are going to move one motion when the bills will be moved for consideration.
Because a lot many, opposition parties, they are of the view that since there are substantive changes, so it should be referred to the select committee. So accordingly, if these people are saying that Congress is also, following the same line.
Well, the UPA government had introduced this bill in the Rajya Sabha in 2008. The bill seeks to raise the ceiling on FDI investment in Indian insurance companies to 49% from the present 26%, while retaining management control with the Indian partner. Opposition parties say one of the new amendments allows for FII and portfolio investment in Indian insurance companies, which may be short-term and volatile in nature. This despite the fact that the proposed amendment also provides that any FII or portfolio investment also be counted while calculating the total amount of foreign investment in an Indian insurance company. This clause has been provided so that the composite foreign holding does not exceed the ceiling of 49%. Going back to senior journalist Priya Ranjan who's here in our studio, of course, the big question really on everyone's mind is, will this bill really be passed in Parliament?
You heard Mr. Rajiv Shukla saying we are also following the same line. Now, clearly much has been talked about. This bill has been pending since 2008.
Yes.
This was the proposal of the Congress-led UPA government. So, it has been discussed and discussed again. So, it's a fig leaf to say that the amendments need to be carefully looked into and it has to go to a select committee. The whole world has been waiting for India to walk the talk in terms of what's been promised for years, to raise the FDI limit from 26% to 49%. It has become a showcase of India's reforms, or rather, whether India economic reforms will proceed in right earnest in India or not. That being the case, it is in the economist's interest that such a legislation is passed quickly. But clearly, Trinamool Congress and the left parties have been traditionally and in principle opposed to FDI and insurance. So they have been consistent. It is Congress which is inconsistent, but I believe that they have good political reason to be stalling this bill, because I believe that Congress has been claiming that just 2 months into the government, this government wants to finish up the opposition. They have launched a program of political vendetta against Congress, and in this National Herald case. Now that of course is a case that has been filed by a member of BJP, Dr. Subramanian Swamy, in a court. But Congress also feels that the government, for instance, this income tax notice to the top Congress leaders in this very case, and yesterday's reports that Enforcement Directorate is also has also begun to look into this case. These things Congress is claiming to be political vendetta, and the fact that Congress's demand for the leader of opposition status in the Lok Sabha, the government seems to be in no mood to grant it.
Yes,
and it's clear that it's opposed to it. Because after the Attorney General's opinion, it's very clear that the government doesn't want to give it. Now, that being the case, Congress feels that its earlier promise that it would play a constructive opposition in the interest of the country, national interest, particularly in terms of economic policies, in terms of backing the very economic reforms that it proposed when it was in power.
Yes.
I think Congress has political reasons now to develop cold-field, not only to develop cold-field, but to follow the same line as Mr. Shukla has just said.
It's interesting, isn't it, to see how the tables have reversed. You know, in 2008, the Congress brought this bill before the Rajya Sabha, and now the BJP is pushing for this bill, and the Congress is, is saying that no, we don't want to go ahead with it.
The same line when, people like, leaders like Mr. Shukla says, the same line in the Indian democratic context is that you stand where you sit in the house. If you are in the opposition, then you would be opposing what you proposed when you were in the government. That's been the case. Now today, NDA, which is in power, BJP particularly, it has been opposed to the very legislation that today they want to be passed, and if necessary, they are preparing, it seems, for a special joint session of both houses to muster the numbers to get it passed. Now, this desperation wasn't there.
Yes.
When Congress has been pushing it, Congress-led UPA government has been pushing it since 2008. Now, today, NDA says that the bill must pass. It's a showpiece reforms legislation. It will bring in $7 billion into the country. Now, Congress would be justified in saying that, well, this $7 billion would have come into the country.
Yes, long time back.
Yes, in 2008.
Yes.
So, this is, unfortunately, the country's economy is held hostage to its politics.
Indeed, the country's economy is held hostage by its politics, of course. Another interesting aspect is the fact that, all these opposition leaders have been talking about these 11 substantial changes. Now, what are these 11 substantial changes that they are talking about, and is it justified only because of these 11 substantial changes to send the bill to the Select Committee?
Well, I refer to that. This is being discussed threadbare. So there is nothing to discuss, and the confusion that's now being created. For instance, whether portfolio investment, which is investment which is made in stock exchanges, would after 49% of FDI, which is foreign direct investment, whether foreigners could still be investing more than 49% through the stock exchanges. Now, the bill is very clear about it, that the 49% will be a composite ceiling, like it is the case in the telecom sector, where 74% of FDI is allowed. It's a composite foreign investment, foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, everything put together. So there is no confusion about it. Similarly, most of these amendments and these 11 areas which are being talked about means this bill has gone to the committee, standing committee. It's been reported, and it's been discussed. In fact, there seems to have been always, at least insofar as the two major political combinations are concerned, there seems to have been always a consensus on the provisions of the bill. There is no doubt about it. As I said, the left parties and the Trinamool Congress, they have, and some other parties, have been consistently opposed, and they would remain so. But there has been, if you take a head count, there is no doubt that large numbers in the Lok Sabha, 15th Lok Sabha, and today in the 16th Lok Sabha, and in the corresponding parliaments, have been in support of this legislation. Yet this legislation hasn't gone through.
Because of political reasons, of course. Let's talk about the bill itself. Hypothetically, say for instance, the bill is passed, if there is a joint session that is called for, how do you see this particular bill impacting the economy and impacting the common man on the whole?
Well, I don't buy that it's going to bring in $7 billion into the economy immediately. There is no question about it. If you remember it, when insurance was opened up for the first time, that was opened up for the private sector and for foreign investment, which was pegged at 26%. Even then, a lot of hype had been created that this will bring in a lot of money for long-term investment into infrastructure. This will increase the insurance penetration in the economy, etc., etc. The experience in the last 10 years, if you see, and of course you've had 23, 24 companies which have come in, and they are doing their business, but the business development hasn't been of the kind that was thought of. So that doesn't mean the potential is not there. Potential is there. It is not as much as the hype
is being
but
created.
Clearly India has to create that. So that is number one insofar as the insurance sector is concerned. But this kind of a policy measure, as I was just saying, has signaling effect in other areas. It is, you take it or not, means it is an area which is being seen as to whether India is actually serious about business.
Yes.
About keeping its economy open and pursuing a market economy.
Indeed. All right, we'll have to leave it at that. Mr. Priya Ranjan Das, thank you so much for joining us on the show this week and sharing your insights on both those very crucial topics. That's all the time we have on this edition of Policy Watch. Thank you so much for watching. Keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.